In the past week, public companies have purchased 4,400 Bitcoin, and only 1,350 were mined. Saylor just dropped another $110 million and announced it this morning, while Japan's Metaplanet is planning to stack 210,000 Bitcoin. That's 1% of the total supply by 2027. And thus, Bitcoin is pumping up near 108,000 this morning, very close to new all-time highs. And now it seems like everybody wants in. We've got tiny coffee companies with just 10 stores saying they're going to buy over $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. We have loss-making media firms who are joining the treasury game. So what is this? Is this a top signal? Or is the real accumulation just beginning? Let's get into it. Today, I am very happy to be joined by Fernando. Let me get you up on stage here. My man,
hey,
how you doing?
What's going on, Rob?
Fernando Nikolic, thank you so much for joining us today. You are a member of Blockstream, and you also have a platform called Bitcoin Perception, allowing people to see the narratives of what is going on in Bitcoin, how the rest of the world perceives it, and give some interesting data and insights as to how the world is viewing Bitcoin at this moment. Fernando, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. It's quite the news flash to wake up to. I feel like this Bitcoin treasury strategy is just not stopping right now, and I don't know how long this is gonna continue. But yeah, I think we're gonna go into new ATH territory with these news, and yeah, it's exciting times ahead, man. It's a wild time to be alive.
Exciting times indeed. And while us Bitcoiners who have been here for a bit, we are very happy to be above 100K. There are some new people in the space who might be sort of wondering what is going on. We've got all this bullish news. Why aren't we just pumping to 200, 300, 400,000 Bitcoin before our very eyes? So we today will be breaking down, of course, the newsletter. And that newsletter is Bitcoin News Weekly. It comes out every Monday at 7 a.m. straight to your inbox. And then we do this live stream, live on X, live on YouTube, where we break it all down, give you the biggest headlines in Bitcoin so you don't need to waste your time scrolling Twitter, scrolling X like we do all day. So yes, let's dive right into it. First, I actually want to draw a little attention to this. Do you want to let's talk about what's going on right here? What do we got going on right here, Fernando?
Well, this is the perception index. It's a way better version of this industry standard fear and greed index, and this is provided by Bitcoin Perception. So essentially, what this is a calculation of all the coverage that is happening at any given time, full transparent, 200 plus sources, and take that all that coverage goes into this calculation to see what is the sentiment scale from 0 to 100, with closer to 100 being bullish and closer to 0 being bearish. And well, that's not exactly the snapshot of right now, but that is how it looks like when you log into the Perception application and check in at any given time. This is not a static score that updates every 2 or 4 hours. This is real-time sentiment right now, and that's what it is essentially. Yeah.
Amazing, man. So yeah, where are we right now on the live score?
Right now, the weekend is usually pretty, it goes down because it's not that much coverage and it's just like regular folks talking.
Mm-hmm.
So Mondays are always, there's always a big change on Mondays and beginnings of the week because now mainstream media, other legacy outlets start covering Bitcoin. So we are at 51.2, but it is in the index scale, we're up 5.5 points in the last 24 hours. So it has jumped positively overnight. And in terms of the actual sentiment, I can see that we have jumped 7.6% in positive, and we're down 2.9% in negative coverage. So markets are pretty bullish, my friend. This is just how the week is getting started. And yeah, let's see how the week progresses.
Nice. Well, if we're just around 50, then we've got plenty of room to run, right?
Definitely.
We are not at euphoria just yet. Let's see how these months ahead play out. So let's dive right into the newsletter. And to begin, we start off with our adoption section. And this piece of news was pretty interesting, that since the 2024 election, small Bitcoin addresses of less than 0.1 Bitcoin have declined and stabilized, while the number of larger addresses holding over 100 Bitcoin have hit a new all-time high under the Trump administration. So if we take a look at these charts here, we can see these shrimp. People with less than 0.1 Bitcoin, they sort of peaked here in November during the election and have declined since then. And right when that happened, we went to new all-time highs, right? So they've definitely stabilized since the beginning of 2025. But it's interesting that when we ran from 70K up to 100, people with smaller amounts of Bitcoin were selling. Does that make sense to you?
I think it makes sense to me, because if you look at these wallets and think that majority of these wallets are people who are just entering the space, they just have a lot of education to do in order to understand the asset that they're actually holding. So if right after the election, Bitcoin price saw an uptick, they were probably the first one to sell. And it's also interesting that at the same time, in the same conjunction, whale addresses went up, meaning they essentially sold to whales. And the whales, the richer got richer, and the whales got even fatter. And I guess that's just how it is.
Yeah, that does seem to be how it is. But yeah, I mean, addresses with over 100 Bitcoin, they were sort of in this trough, right? Since 2018, when we had a bear market, right? And they didn't really accumulate too much during the 2021, 2022 bull markets, staying around here around 16K. But since then, since the election in November 2024, we've shot up by over 2,000 addresses with over 100 Bitcoin. So yeah, it does seem as if the whales smelled out the fact that we've entered into this sort of new era with these Bitcoin treasury companies, with an administration that is very pro Bitcoin, a strategic Bitcoin reserve, executive order, all this stuff. The whales knew that it was coming, while the crabs and the shrimps, those with less than 0.1 Bitcoin, were willing to sell to them. Don't do it. You don't have to sell your Bitcoin to the whales. Have a little patience, and instead watch what they're doing. See these numbers of addresses with over 100 Bitcoin go up, and realize maybe that's where you should be.
And also, parallel, you also see that the amount of Bitcoin held by exchanges, because you always, you can take the wallets of different exchanges, and you usually see them in these charts. But they have just had less and less Bitcoin over time. So this is literally private entities, whether there is, individual whales or private companies or anything. These are the people who are accumulating Bitcoin. So it's not exchanges necessarily. It's not consolidation going on. This is literally, noobs selling to sailor.
Noobs selling to sailor, man. It's tough to see, but yes, we've got some people over in the live chat. We've got Crypto Midwest. Good morning. We've got our guy Nima. Hello, how you doing? CS over here says the collapse of gold is going to send shockwaves that change the world forever. Look for Adam Livingston's latest video to Peter Schiff. Yeah, shout out to Adam Livingston. He's been putting out some amazing videos on a daily basis. Definitely go check him out after this live stream and get your education up. Yes, so getting back to the newsletter. Yeah, we have some interesting news out of Romania. The largest postal service there, Posta Romana, will install Bitcoin and crypto terminals across its network. So you go and drop off your mail, and you'll be able to pick up some Bitcoin at a Bitcoin ATM. Fernando, have you used a Bitcoin ATM?
Yeah, I have, but more like experimental. I remember the fees were horrible and brutal, so I quickly found other sources to stack. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who don't even have other options, and ATMs are extremely useful for those people. I assume Romania doesn't have a lot of infrastructure for these things, so just a physical ATM is probably good. I don't know how safe it is, though, in different places. I mean, the physical aspect of an ATM does doesn't really favor OPSEC that well. So you got to be careful where you walk and tread here. But if I read correctly, it's a state centralized postal service. So this is a government controlled entity. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, the state-controlled postal services operator said that several of its post offices will feature cryptocurrency terminals installed in partnership with local company BTR Exchange. The first terminal is already operational on the premises of Post One in Tulsia, offering users the possibility to deposit cash to top up their accounts on the Bitcoin Romania platform. So yeah, the initiative facilitates access to cryptocurrency trading, contributing to increasing digital financial inclusion. So yeah, I mean, these Bitcoin ATMs, they definitely were a gateway for a lot of people. That's where I bought my first Bitcoin, was one over in New York City. But yeah, once you start realizing what's going on here, you're paying fees that are what, 20, 30% above spot market. So if you've only got cash, it's your only method, you don't know anybody else that you can buy Bitcoin peer-to-peer with. These Bitcoin ATMs offer a great way to sort of get your feet wet, get some Bitcoin, experiment, see what's up. And it also just adds some legitimacy, right? If you see this at a state-controlled postal service, they're allowing Bitcoin ATMs to show up. I think it goes to show that, yeah, okay, Bitcoin's got some legitimacy to it. Yeah. It's not going to.
And it's also a thing, I think like this is going to, maybe this is a second shot at the remittances use case, right? Like I think a lot of people were bullish on remittances as a use case when it came to El Salvador adopting Bitcoin. That didn't really pan out that well, I think. I don't think it moved the needle in terms of like total percentages of remittances from the US to El Salvador being on Bitcoin. But I know that there's a lot of Romanians working in the EU. So they definitely are using remittances to send money back home. And let's see if this is a good shot. Maybe that will move the needle. But I'm bullish on that use case anyhow. So it's cool to see that the remittances use case will get another opportunity to shine when it comes to this one.
Yeah, remittance use for Bitcoin is absolutely huge. It's interesting. It does seem as if there is some crackdown on that in America. I think the Republicans want to put a 3.5 to 5% tax on remittances, money going out of the country. And El Salvador, I mean, a large part of its GDP is remittances. You would have thought that would have been eaten up by Bitcoin more. It's been sort of lackluster adoption for that regard in El Salvador. But as time goes on, yeah, the world is realizing that this is the sort of the fastest, easiest, cheapest way to send money across borders. Why would you not want to use Bitcoin for it?
Totally.
So yeah, going back into the newsletter, we've got Strike announcing an upgrade to their Bitcoin-backed loans with tiered rates starting at 9.5% APR, lower minimums starting at 10K, and loans up to 1 billion. So that was Jack Mallers' big speech at Bitcoin 2025, that they would be offering these loans, right? And when they first started, the APR was around 12%. So they've got some feedback, and they're making changes to their platform, right? They're bringing the APR down to 9.5%. You can start with a 10K loan, so that's roughly 0.1 Bitcoin right now. You can take a loan out against that. And yeah, they definitely also got a lot of flack in the last week about some fine print in their terms of services having the word rehypothecation. Jack Mallers has come out and denied that and said that there is no such thing. Yeah, the Bitcoin might go to their trusted partners like NYDIG, but once it's there, it's not moving anywhere else. Did you see any of that on Twitter last week?
Yeah, I saw that. And, I think one thing to remember, to keep in mind when you see news like this is that everybody will want to have your Bitcoin. So I think that it's a duality between a hyper Bitcoinized future when everything is denominated in Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is the main collateral that backs everything, and financial products, loans, credit will be offered on top of that. But then on the other side is just this self-sovereignty trade-off, right? Like you have to literally give your Bitcoin to someone else to get those services and those products. So it's very interesting. I think, what I like the most about it is just the options that people eventually have. Everybody's life is different. We all have individual needs that differ. So the fact that more options are available and that the only option is not, okay, you hold on to your Bitcoin and then you have to sell for fiat whenever you need it, and then kind of like regret it when, 5-10 years pass, I think is great. I think is great. And yeah, do your own diligence, be very mindful of the small print and choose your vendor wisely. I think that's the only way to go. But I do think it's interesting to see the financialization of Bitcoin happening at the same time. It's super bullish.
Yeah, it was a big narrative last cycle in 2021, 2022. People said, don't sell your Bitcoin. You're going to be able to take your loans out against it. And now we're seeing the platforms proliferate where you actually can do this. Have you ever actually done it yourself? Have you taken a loan out against your Bitcoin?
This close, that last cycle, this close, because you start, thinking about like financial engineering a little bit and see how you can just use a fiat loan to stack more Bitcoin eventually, because the interest rate that you're going to get from a regular vendor is going to be inferior to the appreciation of Bitcoin, right? That's kind of like the thesis. But just that is very risky in itself, and I don't have appetite for that risk, to be honest with you. And then you have the platform risk as well, which in last cycle we really saw how that could play out. So I think though that these offerings are a little bit more sophisticated in 2025 than when it was in 2021, 2022, when the house of cards collapsed. But yeah, it's still not perfect. But I do like the fact that they're coming back in this cycle and trying again with more improved services as well. But how about you? Did you try that?
I haven't. I think the only case I would really want to do that is for something like a house, right? If I'm to buy real estate, I think it makes total sense. Something that you're going to be in for years, and hopefully won't get liquidated. And you can just stay in that and make sure that Bitcoin over time will appreciate and will pay for itself. And there's some really cool options for that too. I mean, People's Reserves, CJ Konstantinos, he's starting his own mortgage-backed, Bitcoin-backed mortgages type platform, and I think that's going to be really popular. If not this cycle, then definitely the next one. But yeah, it makes all the sense in the world to collateralize a mortgage with Bitcoin, right? And hopefully have to pay off that mortgage with less Bitcoin than when you started with that loan.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories from like 2011, 2012 of like people wanting to buy property, and they were like offering like 30, 50,000 Bitcoins. And they said, the seller said no. And that's the other way around. Like nobody wants to really sell their Bitcoin in order to buy a house necessarily. So now the middle ground after 15 years of like learning is like, okay, let's use that as a collateral to get a loan and then finance a hard asset as well, like a property, using Bitcoin as collateral. I think that this is the compromise that we need to get to, and I feel like it's going to be a big part of a hyper Bitcoinized future, services like this.
Yeah, and just the proliferation of options, right? It might not be for everybody, but it's definitely you have the ability to do it, which is amazing to see. Bitcoin is being legitimized.
Yes, sir.
So last week, there was quite the stir about this, California's AB 1052. So when this passed, many people were spreading online that this meant that California could confiscate your Bitcoin. But that is actually not what's going on here. So they passed this law. This was a piece of legislation that was backed by the Satoshi Action Fund. And this is giving Bitcoin the rights of the unclaimed property rules. So this means that if you have Bitcoin that's been left on an exchange for over 3 years, previously, I believe the state had or the exchange could sell the Bitcoin and put it to cash if it was unclaimed property. But this makes it so that the exchange and the state, they will not sell your Bitcoin. They will hold it for you, and you are able to claim it at any time in which you can prove your identity that you own the Bitcoin there. So not exactly sure of the exact workings of whether if you just look at your Bitcoin on the exchange, does that mean that it's still active? Do you have to move your Bitcoin in order to keep that 3-year window open? But there was a lot of hubbub that California was going to just take seize unclaimed Bitcoin that has been sitting there for over 3 years. But no, what they're really saying is that Bitcoin that has been unclaimed will not be sold. It will stay as Bitcoin, so you don't risk losing the appreciation if you were to come back and claim it in the years ahead. Did you see this?
I have no idea what this is. Why? I mean, I would think that California have bigger issues, more important issues to tackle, and maybe they should like look into passing laws or anything that is more towards just the general well-being of the people living in the state. It makes absolutely no sense to create this. I haven't read the law, so I don't really know. But from like a first impressions perspective, why makes very little sense. And I think a lot of these these legislators who are passing law, that's kind of like their job. They need to pass something all the time, and I think this is just one of these things that they passed. And people will just circumvent around it anyway, like people selling at a loss on the 31st of December of each year, and then they buy right back on January 1st, just to kind of like bypass the law of to get some tax advantages of a loss, but then you buy right back in the next day. What is the difference? So this is just another thing that's going to be circumvented. I have no clue why this law even got created. Sorry, I saw it though on my timeline, and I was like, I'm not even
going to look into this. So yes, I think it was part of the Satoshi Action Fund's Right to Transact initiative, where they're trying to make sure that these laws get passed in every single state that say that the citizens are guaranteed the right to transact in digital assets, right? And so this bill makes it clear the fourth largest economy in the world, California, is ready to protect the freedom to transact in Bitcoin and digital assets. So clarifying this other rule, it establishes a clear process for safeguarding unclaimed digital property, allowing lost Bitcoin and digital assets to be securely held in its native form rather than being liquidated into cash. This ensures that when users recover their assets, they will receive the full value of their digital property. So yeah, it's interesting, and I think it was just a great example of how untruths can just spread very quickly across the internet, in particular circles, and what's really going on here. But don't worry, California isn't coming for your Bitcoin just yet. But in other legal issues, we had Congressman Tim Burchett. He introduces a bill to turn Trump's strategic Bitcoin reserve executive order into law. So again, an executive order is a decree by a president, and it can be undone if a new president comes in and doesn't like that law with just a stroke of a pen, right? So we've got Congressman Tim Burchett here, and with wanting to codify Executive Order 14233 to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So this, of course, happened back in March. We had the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Executive Order announced, and many things were said at that time that they were going to audit, of course, how much Bitcoin we have, and that was supposed to be revealed within 60 days. And those 60 days are definitely well over and past. And then B, they were going to be looking for budget neutral ways to acquire more Bitcoin. So far it's been sort of radio silence since we got that executive order. But I would say the best thing to come out of that executive order was the fact that they divided it into a strategic Bitcoin reserve and then a digital asset stockpile, putting all of their crypto into another category. And the fine print said, of course, that stockpile could be sold to answer any needs that the government might need in terms of budgeting, but the Bitcoin would not be sold. So yes, from an outside of America point of view, what do you think of this strategic Bitcoin reserve executive order from Trump and where we are now?
As long as they keep buying it and not taking it from the poor Californians, I'm happy. I think as a non-American, I am very bullish on America itself. So I do want the U.S. to keep winning and to succeed, and in this kind of like weird times that we're in, where we see the whole world shifting in the political sense, in the narrative sense, in the economical sense as well. And I think that for the U.S. to keep the hegemony, they just need to get as much Bitcoin as possible. So by any means necessary, yes, put that into law. An EO is just more of a, it's like a letter of intent in a way. Is you're signaling something, but put it into law is the necessary next step. And I'm happy that it was done so fast, to be honest with you. So yeah, super bullish on that.
Yeah, and we've got Trump's head of his digital assets group, this guy, Bo Hines. He might be young, he's like in his 20s, but he's definitely articulate, well-spoken. He's been going around. He was at Bitcoin 2025, and he's been doing a bunch of interviews, and he still says that it is imperative for America to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible, and that they are looking into methods to do so. So in terms of signal, I think that's the closest that we can get to the administration and what their thoughts are. And it definitely seems as if Bitcoin is still top of mind and they want more of it.
Yeah.
So good things there. Interesting turn here we have over in Switzerland. The Swiss Federal Council is to join the automatic exchange of information with 74 countries, which includes all of the EU, UK, some countries over in Asia, but not the US and Saudi Arabia. So what I think this means is that they are going to be sharing information as to what who is on exchanges, what people are buying amongst governments. I mean, it's pretty interesting. Switzerland has always been known for its financial privacy, and then they go ahead and join this. Switzerland also, from what I've heard of Bitcoin companies over in Europe, they have very strict laws in terms of advertising, what can be said, and the buying and selling of Bitcoin. What's your experience with Switzerland?
No, not much, to be honest. I do see the work that the Plan B guys are doing in Lugano. I know that there's a pretty cool exchange called Relay that are based in Switzerland, and I think Bitbox, the hardware wallet, is Swiss as well. There's a couple of cool companies doing good work in Switzerland, and I think all of them, collectively have been pretty instrumental in orange pilling the country, both legislators and government people and normies. But apart from that, no, I haven't bought any Bitcoin. I don't use any of these services from Switzerland, so I don't know. But I think one thing is clear, and that the G20, NATO, alliance, whatever, are going to just implement all these bilateral agreements that will be pretty sketchy for individual privacy, to be honest, because I honestly, I don't think there's like 1 month that I don't hear some governmental database being hacked and private user info being distributed on the dark web. So if any organization that are bilaterally collecting information, I'm like, that's just going to explode at any time. So yeah, very bearish on that. But I think the sovereign individual thesis comes into play here as well, where you see all the countries in the West getting together to collect information about their citizens, which leads to, geo arbitrage essentially. And you just like people who don't like that will just eventually emigrate to locations who are, more about freedoms.
Yeah, as we saw with the Coinbase data breach just in the last couple of weeks, is that, I mean, once you sign up, I mean, to get on these platforms where, again, a lot of newbies go, right? You go to the Coinbases, you go to the Bitcoin ATM where, I mean, some of these ATMs, you got to give a lot of information too, right? So once you get that, that's in the system. And it usually is tied with that is your transaction history, how much you bought. And that information doesn't really get deleted. So it's still there. So the education is necessary to try to leave as little of a footprint as possible from the very beginning. And I mean, for many of us who did sign up for Coinbase, who did have to take a picture of their driver's license, and give over your social security. I mean, there are some things you can do to try to get that information deleted, of course. And I would say if you're not buying on Coinbase anymore or a platform like that, please make the steps necessary in order to get that information removed. But this is a common refrain now here, is that KYC is the crime, right? I mean, creating these massive data honeypots. We're seeing more and more people get attacked, right? I mean, I think there's a crazy chart. I'll look for it right now, but it was from intangible, but just the number of physical attacks against crypto people, Bitcoiners. Yeah, right here. This one. 2025 is on track to be the most dangerous year ever for crypto owners. More than 25 documented physical attacks against crypto owners this year, and the year isn't even halfway done yet.
Yeah, it's sketchy, but I think also it's important to understand the other side, right? Like if you want to be a financial service provider, yeah, you gotta obey the law. It's as simple as that. If you don't like it, just don't open a business that isn't that space. So they gotta go through. They gotta comply, and that's cool. I mean, that's their prerogative. They open up a business, they have that choice. But I think it is important for people to understand what the trade-off is when you do select, any vendor. And this goes also beyond exchanges or anything like that. This goes booking a hotel and giving them your passport or ID to like scan in the back room. Like, what are their OPSEC or what are their data? They don't have any. So we live in a time where these things can leak very easily, and in terms of the exchanges, to be on their side a little bit, like they really have stepped up their their technical chops, I would say. You don't hear about like exchange hacks anymore. You used to do that a lot, a couple of cycles ago. But I think now, and this Coinbase leak that you're talking about, it's all social engineering. That's the leak. That's the real danger. They're the humans that are behind the wheel, not the actual tech. So yeah, you got to be super careful nowadays with not only exchange data, but any data that you give to anyone nowadays.
Very true words. Very true words. All right, everybody. We've got 1,568 people watching us live right now. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Bitcoin News Weekly live show coming at you every Monday morning. If you're here, it would mean a lot if you could just hit that like button, subscribe, share it with your friends, let them know what's going on. I think we give a great roundup here to give you all the latest headlines, all the biggest news in one place. Keep it simple. And thank you so much for tuning in. In the next section that we have going on, big news, JP Morgan bending the knee, planning to allow trading and wealth management clients to use BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF as collateral for loans. So, of course, Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, has been a big enemy of Bitcoin for years, going before Congress, saying that they should shut it down, telling CNBC that it is worthless. What happens if Satoshi comes back and he wants to issue more than 21 million coins, right? This man definitely does not know the inner workings of Bitcoin, hasn't really put the time in to educate himself, is another one of those guys that says, oh, blockchain, not Bitcoin, of course. Blockchain is great. We use it all the time. But it's hard to argue with the success of the greatest ETF launch of all time. The BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, IBIT, has, I believe, 800,000 Bitcoin in its coffers now. I mean, it's been absolutely unprecedented, the amount of inflows that have gone in there. And so when there's a lot of money in one place, tens of billions of dollars, Jamie Dimon is going to be hard-pressed to say no. So now he is accepting the Bitcoin ETF from BlackRock as collateral for loans, as we were talking about, Strike allowing for us average people. JP Morgan is now opening up to their big wealth management clients. So did you see this? Can you believe that Jamie Dimon is bending the knee?
Yeah, I do actually. I can believe it. It is something that I feel that's so funny about like just Bitcoin adoption in general is that 99.9% of people who are finding out about Bitcoin for the very first time are not going to get it, right? I think it's going to take time. It's an individual journey, and you gotta study. You gotta study Bitcoin. The difference here is like whether you're humble about it or very arrogant about it. And I think, dismissing Bitcoin is fine. I don't expect anyone hearing about Bitcoin for the first time to accept it. And it's going to be fine if they dismiss it. But Do it in a humble way, dude, because time will show. And when I started in my career, I started in the music business in the late 2000s. So around 2008, 2009, I was working at Universal Music Group, and I was a very big proponent of torrents. So I wanted to release low bitrate torrents, parts of singles, parts of albums before the actual release, so that it got distribution and got people excited about it. And nobody wanted to do that. They saw torrenting as crime, as piracy, and maybe some of you remember those campaigns that they put out at that time. But then they eventually bend the knee too to streaming, right? They were against LimeWire, but then they were for Spotify later, and iTunes and stuff like that. So it took them time. They fought it at first, but then user demand changed the tune, right? And that's exactly what's happening now with JP Morgan and anybody else that have to serve clients that want to get into Bitcoin. They just have to listen to the user demand and bend the knee again. So yeah, I've seen it all before, just in a different package.
Yeah, technology has a way of doing that, right? Enough people adopt it. It's hard for these legacy incumbents to deny it eventually. And so, I mean, Bitcoin's 16 years old now. We've got Nima in the chat clarifying the fact, yes, IBIT now holds 661,000 Bitcoin. That is more than Michael Saylor's 582,000 Bitcoin. They just got to a round number this morning with the announcement. But yeah, it's here, man. It is Bitcoin in the last year or two. I mean, you would have before 2024, you could have made a strong argument that they're going to ban it, right? These banks would never have anything to do with Bitcoin. The governments are going to squash it somehow. But that argument is getting weaker and weaker by the day with headlines like this.
Yeah, and that's why you see all these public companies that are, announcing their Bitcoin treasury strategies. Their stock prices go so much up because it's a rubber band that has been stretched too much. Japanese people couldn't legally or be compliant in buying their Bitcoin. Now they see Metaplanet and they all flock in. There was a Swedish H100 company who announced 2 weeks ago. Same thing happened with so everybody. It's that rubber band effect until everybody gets Bitcoin legally, then that tactic is probably not going to be more relevant anymore. But right now we're in the middle of it, and everybody just want that door opened from wherever they are in the world. So yeah, it's super bullish.
Yes, the Treasury meta is in full play, and that is the section of the newsletter, Bitcoin News Weekly, that we are diving into right now. So, in that regard, we've got Jack Mallers with 21 Capital, who looks to be a big player right from the get. They, of course, are working with Tether. They're working with SoftBank. They're working with Cantor Fitzgerald to create essentially a strategy competitor, right? They're going to want to go head to head with Michael Saylor. They put that in their pitch book. They compared themselves directly to strategy and made themselves an option outside of strategy. And one of the ways that they want to make the difference clear is that they are implementing proof of reserves over on this website here. Time Chain Index, shout out to Sonny EXP over on X. Highly recommend following him. He is one of the best on-chain sleuths we've got out there. But they're keeping track of this. Every single transfer over to 21 Capital. Most of this was sent over by Bitfinex and Tether. And we have Paulo Arduino, the CEO of Tether, posting the Bitcoin transactions live on the internet for everyone to see. And that is in contrast to Saylor, who at Bitcoin 2025 said that it is foolish for Bitcoin treasury companies to announce where their Bitcoin's at. So yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think that this will become industry standard, that every company will eventually show how much Bitcoin they have?
I don't know about industry standard, but I think a lot of people in the future will probably make that choice, and other people will not. And I think the more people who do, the better, because paper Bitcoin could be a real problem if this continues, right? And nobody knows where the reserves are. So yeah, a lot of people, they see, how gold eventually got captured and controlled in a way, and I feel a lot of people have the same fears for that happening to Bitcoin as well, and that will happen if you don't know where the reserves are, right? I think Fort Knox, nobody really knows what's inside there. And they haven't for like decades. So I think proof of reserve is definitely a plus, just for transparency's sake, but it's up to the individual companies. One thing though that I think is interesting is Strategy. They don't make anything. They're not a Bitcoin company like that, right? And 21 is the closest thing that you have, because I don't know if 21 is going to build any products or do any Bitcoin tech, but you got Tether behind it, who was very involved in Bitcoin, and obviously Jack Mallers with Strike, who are, they create great products. So I think we're moving closer to like an actual Bitcoin treasury company that actually creates Bitcoin things.
Mhm.
21 is not there, but I think that's one step closer, and I really want to see like what's going to be the first public company that actually makes Bitcoin wallets, mining, hardware, whatever, that has a Bitcoin treasury company and is just like open about it with proof of reserves. That would be that news would be huge to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Last year, Saylor came out and said that Strategy is now a Bitcoin development company, but we haven't really heard much come out of Strategy in that regard. But they are offering a lot of new financial products, right?
If you actually go to archive.org and you go to the about or the investor relations page, you can see that they had it and now they took it away. So I think they kind of like pivoted on that rebrand because they realized like, hey, we're not really creating any Bitcoin products. So maybe choose something else.
Yeah, instead they chose to create financial products, right? They are creating these perpetual preferred stocks. They've got Strike, they've got Strife, and they just issued a new one called Stride. Originally looking to raise 250 million, and they 4x that up to 1 billion. So a lot of Strategy holders were getting very upset with Michael for selling common shares at the ATM, right? Selling shares on the market as the price went up in order to raise funds to buy more Bitcoin. But now he's able to sell these perpetual preferred stocks, not sell Strategy shares on the open market, raise money that way, and then use the funds to buy Bitcoin. So yes, they are now up to, this was last week's total. Just this morning before this came out, they announced they are now at 582,000 Bitcoin. Absolutely insane that one company is able to amass more than 2%, close to 3% of the total Bitcoin supply. But that is where we're at. And they have many copycats following them. So towards the end of the show, we will follow up more on these copycats and the other companies who are moving in the same direction as Strategy. But let's round out here with the mining section. So we had a solo Bitcoin miner hit it big last week. They rented a large amount of hash rate from NiceHash, which is a hash rate marketplace. You can just go online, say you want to purchase this amount of hash rate for this amount of time. I think they purchased a couple of petahashes, and they struck a block. Right, they blocked number 899,826 was won by somebody renting out hash rate on NiceHash using CK Pool to mine all by themselves, taking a lottery ticket, and they won 3.151 Bitcoin straight to them for taking the risk. Yeah, have you any experience with mining yourself?
No, but I feel like it's such a crazy thing to see, because you're essentially cloud mining, right? Like this is the thing that a lot of people are like, there's a lot of FUD about that, and a lot of people don't see that as a serious product. But you're effectively paying for the hash rate that somebody else is producing, and I wonder how much. What was the ROI on that? I mean, how much money actually was paid? But it's an amazing thing to see. It's just amazing. Like kudos to that guy. You're a king, dude. It's a great job.
You're a legend. You're going up against these corporate behemoths with gigawatts of energy behind them, and then you just purchase some petahashes for a couple hours, and then you strike it big.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, this year has been absolutely amazing. We've seen blocks be found by bid axes, right? They can sit on your desk and mine at 1 terahash, and it's a 1 in 10,000 chance for a year that you'll, if you run this thing constantly, that you'll find it. But hey, it can happen, and it does. It has.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, hopefully this continues, this home mining movement. I think it's really cool. Bitcoiners like to tinker, they like to experiment, try new things, and the mining has become very centralized, right? We've got these giant farms and these corporate monsters who are putting so much energy behind it. So to bring some of that hash rate back into the household in a way that is both sustainable, doesn't take too much energy, and is not too loud, right? If you've ever been around a Bitcoin miner, you know that it's not the most pleasant thing to have sitting right next to you. But we're getting new options, and cloud mining is one way, bid axes are another way. And some more interesting news in the mining sector. We've got Binance, a UK-based Bitcoin miner, is rebranding to the London BTC Company, and it lists on the London Stock Exchange, aiming to become the UK's largest Bitcoin treasury company. So we had the pleasure of interviewing this team while at Bitcoin 2025. Binance, they're listed in the UK, their headquarters is there, but they've got miners in Canada and the USA. And they are also listed on the London Stock Exchange. It's very hard to get a Bitcoin company up there. The financial regulators are pretty anti-BTC, as we've seen, but they're listed. They changed their name to the London Bitcoin Company. They're going to keep their miners, but they're also going to start a Bitcoin treasury. So in doing so, they're going to be able to offer Bitcoin exposure to many funds, retirement funds, whatnot in the UK that could only invest in companies that are on the LSE. So there's another small company called Smarter Web. I think they were an online design firm that purchased $5 million worth of Bitcoin and then had their market cap shoot up to like over $200 million within a couple of weeks, right? So there definitely is an appetite over in London for Bitcoin exposure, and these guys are tapping into it.
Yeah, props on the name change. Binance with a Z at the end. I not that cool of a name. The London BTC Company is more regal, more, yeah, I like that a lot actually. And just on a serious note, this is the same playbook that just individual plebs have been doing since they first got into Bitcoin, right? Like you are a productive member of society, you get a salary, you perform a service or a product, and you get paid for that. And what you do with that money, you put it into Bitcoin, you hold your purchasing power over time so that you can continue to benefit society with better products or better services. So yeah, heck yeah. Just great to see that these type of news comes from every corner of the world.
And another piece of news coming out of London is Bluebird Mining Ventures, a UK-listed gold miner, not a Bitcoin miner, a gold miner. They announced the adoption of a Bitcoin treasury strategy, turning gold into digital gold. So yeah, these guys have mines in, is it South Africa or in Latin America? But yeah, they're mining physical gold out of the ground, and they are going to be selling their proceeds in order to buy Bitcoin. I think it's quite the sign of the times. I think Peter Schiff would be very upset if he knew about this news. But pretty amazing, right? I mean, do you think that gold will eventually be completely demonetized, or will it always be a part of human civilization?
Yeah, I think it's always going to be a part, but I think it's going to play a lesser and lesser part of society. Just like I also believe like fiat currency is not going to be, depleted or die. Even though a lot of Bitcoiners say that it's going to continue to exist, but it's just going to be less and less relevant over time. There's going to be some people using it, but no, we are in the age of digital gold, of Bitcoin, and see all these companies that are coming together now and understanding that they are on a Bitcoin standard. More companies are going to be on a Bitcoin standard, and the products and the services that they will offer society in the future with these companies being on a Bitcoin standard, I mean, that changes the game altogether. So yeah, Bitcoin is just just getting started. All these other alternatives are just going to lose relevance over time. But yeah, I don't think they're going to go away completely now.
No, gold has been with us for a long time, and whether even if it's just for jewelry or for electronics, it's going to be with us moving forward. But if you want to get rid of your physical gold and get into digital gold, here at Bitcoin News, we recommend getting set up with Rhino. I would like to briefly interrupt our stream to give a big shout out to the sponsor of it, Rhino Bitcoin. Rhino is your all-in-one Bitcoin super app built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. You can buy or sell your Bitcoin instantly, send sats anywhere in the world on the Lightning Network, withdraw straight to cold storage, and even turn sats into gift cards or link a Casa multisig all inside one sleek interface. And Rhino is just warming up. Soon you'll be able to pay bills, borrow against your Bitcoin, and stack for retirement without even leaving the app. Download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com or tap the link below in the description and use code Bitcoin News, and Rhino will drop you $10 in free Bitcoin into your account today. So secure your stack with Rhino right now. And let's get back to the end of the show. Thank you so much, Rhino, Fernando, as we rounding out this issue, this live stream. I wanted to talk about these Bitcoin treasury companies who are getting into the play. I mean, we've got the big ones, right? We've got Strategy, we've got Metaplanet, raising $5.4 billion to buy Bitcoin. The blockchain group, also the big one in France, they are going to ask their shareholders for the right to raise $10 billion to accelerate their treasury program. But what do we have here? We've got some other companies that might not be real winners, right? Last week, there was headlines over on X, Vanadi Coffee. So this is a Spanish coffee chain. They've been around for a couple of years. They've got 10 shops, and they plan to purchase $1.1 billion worth of Bitcoin for their treasury, despite never being profitable. If you look over here, their enterprise value is $2.23 million, and they want $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. It's just pretty crazy stuff, because it's not only them, right? We've also got this K-Wave Media. They're listed on the NASDAQ, but they're raising $500 million to buy Bitcoin, despite being unprofitable, generating no revenue, and reporting ongoing losses. Over here, you can see that they do have a larger enterprise value of $218 million. But in the last year, their net income is down 173%, right? And then we also have this guy, Locate Technologies. They've acquired 6 Bitcoin, and they're becoming Australia's first Bitcoin treasury company. But they've got year-to-date net loss and earnings declining 23% annually over the past 5 years. They've got a $31 million enterprise value. But yeah, earnings growth rate, negative 23%, EPS growth rate, negative 15%, net margin, negative 36%. So is this concerning to you? The fact that we have these companies that are not turning a profit, they're not doing what the prototypical person should do, right? Provide value to the world, earn a profit, turn that profit, save it into savings, and put some of that, if not all of it, into Bitcoin, the hardest money, and have that accumulate over time. Instead, these guys are raising money in the open market to just buy Bitcoin hand over fist, despite the fact that their core business is losing money. What do you think is going on here?
Well,
it's bad.
I think, for a lot of the market, a lot of the fundamentals are out the window anyway. And, it doesn't really matter if you're profitable or not. There might be other opportunities to get involved with a certain stock for any other reason. And, this being one of them, right? And that's kind of like from the looks of it, this is the playbook that they want to run with. Like, okay, let's see what happens with our stock price if we just announce our intentions to buy Bitcoin. There are many examples, and I can't really remember them because they were like literally nobodies. But I do remember there has been a couple of cases before where the CEO of a company that nobody knew about all of a sudden started tweeting about like, okay, yeah, I want to start buying Bitcoin and stuff like that, and they saw like a little bump, an increase in price before they dumped again. So I think there's a lot of market mechanics here, a lot of manipulation happening. Fundamentals are not really there anymore. And I think these 3 or 4 examples that you just showed is just a reflection of that. They will try to get some PR push to get mentioned, and they did a good job. You guys, we are talking about them now. But I think apart from that, it's a very short-term strategy. They're not serious. And we're going to see a lot of companies doing this, because with every new successful Bitcoin treasury company, there's going to be 20, 30 other company CIOs and CEOs thinking about doing something of the same. And out of those 20, 30, maybe 3 or 4 might try. And they're not always going to be successful. Just the name of the game, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, whoever wants to buy Bitcoin, it's your right, your prerogative. Use your fiat as you wish. The real question is, how does this play out over the end of this cycle, right? Are we going to see these guys buy up tens of thousands of Bitcoin and then flinch once the market turns, and then just liquidate and it cause the next bear market? I think that's really been the main concern sort of going on now with these Bitcoin treasury companies buying up so much. And the question is, do they have the conviction? We saw Ryan Cohen of GameStop. Of course, they were sitting on $4 billion, not doing anything with it. They raised another $1.5 billion to buy Bitcoin. And then they went out and bought 4,100 Bitcoin, right? And so that was around $500 million. And so they didn't need to announce it. It wasn't big enough for them to have to announce it right when they did it. So I think they did it a while ago and sat on the news for a couple of weeks, if not months. That came out at the conference. But yeah, when we saw Ryan Cohen talk about their purchase, he didn't seem too enthusiastic. He's like, if the thesis plays out, He was talking about gold a lot. So it seems like this is the hot narrative. A lot of people are jumping on this train. They're taking after the lesson of course, Strategy and Metaplanet, and trying to boost their stock. One company that I think that is actually doing this the right way is Semler Scientific.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that like they're trading at or below MNAV, right? They're trading at or below the value of the Bitcoin that they hold. And they have a functioning business as well. It's not like they're only in Bitcoin. They sell medical devices, but they're still trading below the value of the Bitcoin itself. So it's interesting to see how the narrative can really take off with some of these companies who aren't doing anything, and they can. But these stocks are up, right? If we bring up KVM, yeah, like K-Wave Media, they're up 33% today.
Yeah, wow, crazy.
And we've got these guys are over in Australia, but they were up 18%, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this coffee company, they're up 7% too. So I mean, like it's funny how the markets work, right? And so much of it is narrative, and that's just being a human. We hop on stories, and our job here is to get out the story of Bitcoin.
And this is we are in the middle of a bull market right now, and this is the story, right? Like if you're going to put one story and equate it to a certain cycle, the treasury strategy for pubcos is the story, right? And as any of the other stories that we've seen in previous bull cycles, the ICOs, the NFTs, et cetera, they will be over at one point, and the market will go down. And I think the same dynamic that we started this call with, where you see the smaller wallets just selling and the bigger wallets accumulating, same thing is going to happen at this scale, where you see these Vanadi coffee, whatever, they